Okay, mate. So, hey, Steve, a few months back, he says, turning to the film genre, we both really liked director Stephen Nolan's sweeping epic called Dunkirk. I mean, it was,
Was that a brother of Christopher Nolan by any chance?
what did I call him?
Stephen.
Did I call him Stephen Nolan?
You did.
God, you're a pervasive bugger, aren't you? You're creeping into my lexicon.
I get everywhere, mate. Yeah.
Let's go with Christopher Nolan, shall we?
I think he'd prefer it. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, we liked that Nolan film, and we knew that coming up soonish was going to be another British film about the Second World War, very much focused on Winston Churchill. It's been out for a week or two. It's called Darkest Hour. Pretty high expectations of this, particularly over the performance of Gary Oldman in the lead role. So, how high were your expectations, and were they met, is my question.
Well, I'm going to guess, Simon, my expectations were every bit as high as yours were, having seen the trailers and heard the buzz and
Yes.
knowing everything about it. And I mean, I spoke to my dad on the phone. He's a big World War II buff.
Right.
It opened in the UK before it did here. I had a chat with my dad, and he said it's the best film he'd ever seen. So
Wow.
I was expecting greatness when I went in, and I think you'll possibly agree with me when I say I don't think I was disappointed.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was good. It was incredibly
I like
engaging.
you stopped there to sort of piece your way through the double negatives in that sense.
Yeah. Sorry. This has been an interesting film for me because I had my initial reaction, which was very, very positive, particularly because I thought Gary Oldman was just captivating, and he probably should win an Oscar for that, I think. And I let a bit of time, pass, and it sifted in and out of my mind. And I read some of the other reviews, and there's been quite a bit written about this, and there's been quite a vein of criticism that the film just tinkers with the history too much and created some scenes which didn't occur, changed the way certain characters behaved, and in particular gave Churchill a very, what would you say, Steve? I mean, they showed him to be it was a pretty rounded portrait in terms of he wasn't always this bulldog steadfast, was he? He had moments of doubt and so forth. And some people just don't like that because it meddles with the myth of the man. So I've been thinking about that. I just wondered, as you, as an originally of British living in that part of the world, whether it played in any sort of disturbing or way for you in that it showed Churchill perhaps not to be such a golden boy as he might have been.
I have a feeling, given that he routinely gets voted greatest Englishman in history, that his place in history, his legacy is fairly secure, and can handle even more than this, a less than hagiographic retelling of his history. I think it was fairly sympathetic to him, to be perfectly honest.
I think it was. Yeah, sorry.
There was barely a scene when he wasn't front and center.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was sympathetic, but it did give you. It didn't shy from the fact that he was, and they made quite a bit of this, wasn't they? That by various characters, and even he himself acknowledged, yes, he'd been, accused of military failings in the past, particularly at Gallipoli. We saw that he was egotistical. We saw he was pretty bad-tempered. We saw he was a drinker, clearly ambitious. So they didn't try and hide that side of things. And probably the thing that was really interesting, and we shouldn't give too much of the actual story away, Steve, was that tells very much that the period from him gaining the prime ministership right through to the famous "We shall fight them on the beaches" speech. And we see a really interesting sequence leading up to that speech, don't we, on the way to the Houses of Parliament, which I know, speaking to some people who saw it, really objected to it. They found it very contrived, made up, and showed Churchill to be wavering in his resolve about battling on and not caving into some sort of negotiation with Hitler. So I'm not going to throw the ball back in your court. I found that actually a very engaging scene, and I really got swept up in the emotion of it. But that was a really pivotal scene in the film. How did it play for you?
I'm really torn. I know the scene you're talking about. And it's a scene where he basically seeks the wisdom of the people.
Yes.
And yeah, it's fair to say that he had masses of public confidence and certainty and assuredness that was backed up by hours of being racked with private doubt.
Yeah.
And so they had to do something to get him from doubt to certainty. There had to be some sort of catalyst that made him make his mind up. And so I suspect that that's the reason that scene was sadly, as far as we can tell, created from whole cloth, which is the bit of it that kind of troubles me. Yes, they had to get him to have an epiphany, but the scene did feel sufficiently contrived to me that it didn't sit well. His character in that particular scene was so much lighter. The entire tone of the scene didn't even really fit well with the overall mood of the film itself. The film is very dark in its tone. The colours are very sombre and muted, as befits the winter of war in England.
Yeah.
And yet suddenly, with this one brief scene where, even though the colours aren't necessarily that much lighter, the tone and the mood is much almost frivolous. And he makes a joke about a baby. And you're thinking, that just doesn't quite sit with the rest of the film.
Yeah, well, so we won't say too much more for fear of giving it away, but certainly it is, as Steve said, contrived. The only thing the director tries to do to give a wee taster of it earlier in the film, there are a couple of sequences in the film where Churchill's in a car, in a cab, and the camera's tracking along people along the sidewalk, just the ordinary people of London going about their lives. And I guess that's somehow trying to give a sense that this is the man who's gazing out on his people, if you like, maybe trying to sort of give a sense of he's got to represent them, do the right thing for them. But I don't know if that worked to a certain extent, but it was. I still enjoyed that scene that Steve and I are talking about. It was emotionally satisfying, but it was contrived.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen them do more with Lily James' character, Elizabeth Layton. This is the gal, as they were known back then, the gal who was his basically his personal secretary. You call him a PA, I guess, these days.
Yeah,
and there is a brief moment where she has a photo on her desk of her brother.
Yes,
who is involved in the Dunkirk fiasco, and that's an opportunity for him to connect with the real people. And I would have liked to pursue that angle a lot more. As it is, though, I would also like to see more of Lily James' character. I think she's a cracking young actress, and they didn't really quite give her character enough to do. She was very much a foil for him, and it occurred to me at the end they could possibly have taken her out of the entire film, and I don't know that you'd have missed her.
No, just interesting actually, because another very, very good film about a World War II leader. This is the German film called Downfall. It was about Hitler's last few days. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That film is told from the point of view of Hitler's PA.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
And it works very, very well. But anyway, that's an aside. I thought that the other thing I thought that did work well in this film was Churchill needed to have some dramatic counterparts, some foils to be battling against. So I thought that initially King George the Sixth, I hope I got my numbers right there.
George the Sixth,
Ben Mendelsohn played him. I enjoyed his performance, and Stephen Delane, who I still keep thinking of him in Game of Thrones, but his Halifax portrayal was good, I thought, and they worked well as counters to Churchill as we go through the story.
Although his character did give us one of the most clanging and clunking lines of expository dialogue I've heard in quite a while.
Okay, remind me, which one is that?
Earlier in the film, when they were contemplating who would replace Neville Chamberlain, who had lost the support of the House, and a bunch of high-placed politicians and movers and shakers, including Lord Halifax himself, sit at a dinner table, and one of them says, "Well, what do we think of the possibility of Lord Halifax, the Foreign Secretary?"
Yes,
and I'm thinking, that's a bit on the nose. There were a couple of moments when you obviously, there's going to be a lot of people watching this film, especially the ones who aren't British, who might not necessarily know who Lord Halifax was. But there's got to be a better way of getting a description of him in than something that's quite as honking as that.
Yeah. And we should mention the writer, Anthony McCartan, is a New Zealander, by the way. But I think overall, so there is some...
I apologise.
No, not at all. There is some tweaking of history here. There's no doubt about it. I guess it's the question all the time when you talk about films about real people is, are you seeing a document of record? Well, no, you're not seeing a document of record. It is an interpretation. It is a piece of entertainment. It's a lot of it's going to be true, and some of it's not. So you've kind of get your head around that, don't you? And it's just the degree to which the film troubles you or doesn't trouble you as it takes you on its little journey.
I think that's
the
a
issue.
Very fair comment, really. Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
but overall, great.
Wait, there's one thing we've not talked about.
Yes.
Gary Oldman.
How you get Gary Oldman? Gary Oldman.
I mean,
Gary Oldman.
you know he's going to win the Oscar for this, don't you?
Well, I hope he does. I mean, there's some fantastic makeup, but that's not the reason to win the Oscar. But he inhabits the character, shall we say, and the makeup allows him to do that.
Yes.
And he is, as you said earlier, Steve, he's front and center almost the whole time of the film. It's his film. I don't know. I just thought he gave us some complexity. He gave us some nuance. We talked about the scene towards the end where he shows a lighter side. He shows him having his temper, the doubt and the determination at the same time, and the bluster and all that. And I just thought, yeah, this is a guy who's into it. He's delivering a role he knows is a role that means so much to so many people. Not that should matter, but it does, especially if you're a Brit, I guess. And I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed his performance.
Yeah, I think also worth an honourable mention would be Kristen Scott Thomas as his long-suffering wife Clemmy, who was the only person who could ever actually speak truth to power with Churchill.
Yes, yeah.
I found the scenes with the two of them together were quite deftly done.
Yeah, she's a very, very good actress. Okay, so we're going to recommend this film, are we not?
Oh, wholeheartedly.
Yes.